Hello, everyone. Today with me is Dr. Hitu, and it is such a privilege to have her sit beside me. Welcome to the podcast, Doctor. And you're a scientist. Would you like to share what did you do your studies in?
I'm a biochemist, and I did my PhD from McGill in the field of arthritis research.
You did some research there, and then yoga and meditation teacher. How did this aspect of you came into your life?
Into my life, I think many people have asked me this question, Garima. I think my whole youth has been driven by humanitarian work, the desire to do something more, to serve and to be of help to people wherever. Even growing up, as a preteen, adolescent, these questions came to me as to how I can help more. And many events in my life, places where I lived, people who inspired me, some certain teachers who inspired me when I was a high school student as well, that made me care for people in different ways. And then when Art of Living came into my life, it was very obvious that this is where I needed to be.
Yeah, you said there were many people and events that happened in your life that inspired you. So I would like to know what are those events that shaped your life in a way, in a certain way?
My parents were both very active in the community. My mother was a physician, and she did a lot of voluntary work in very difficult conditions, in places where there was very few resources in terms of medical facilities. Growing up in Ethiopia, I was a teenager there. I used to sometimes see the work that she did in the hospital with very few supplies. And also in Ethiopia, and in those days, seeing poor poverty and people with leprosy on the streets, it had a lot of impact on me as a child. And I used to question, why do some people live like this? How does this happen? And then I had a maths teacher in Ethiopia again. She used to take me as part of the community projects that she worked with to a polio hospital for treating polio victims, children particularly. It inspired me. She inspired me a lot, and I always had the desire to do something more when I grew up.
That's true. Teachers that you have at a very young age do
They
play,
shape you. Yeah.
shape you what you become. I remember that I had my favorite subject was maths again. It's because of not how easy it was. It's because of the instructor, my teacher, who made it easy to understand. And I still owe all of my learnings to that
Yeah.
teacher. Great to hear that too from you. So I can imagine looking into so much of suffering around the world, and you as a child was probably thinking, how do I end this? So was there anything as a child you did to help those people who were suffering, or was there anything that came in your mind but you could not act?
Yeah, like I said, I used to get involved in community projects all the time and school projects that would take us to people with, in more unfavorable conditions, like the leprosy hospital with my mom, and with my polio hospital with my other teacher. But also later on, when I went to boarding school, there were community activities, and whilst my friends were into sports and doing other kinds of social activities, I used to choose to go to a home for the blind and spend time with them, do their groceries for them, take them out. This kind of thing has been part of my life very naturally. Even later on in my life, when after my studies, when I worked in the community organization, a women's center for women who were in difficulty in Montreal, Canada. Same thing, doing frontline services.
Wow. I've also heard that you went to Pakistan to do some work. What was that about?
Yeah, that was after my PhD days. I did an internship in Pakistan for a year where the project was to look at the healthcare accessibility for women who lived in the slums outside of Karachi. So we used to go into slums, talk to women very who lived in very, very poor conditions, and help them out.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about what you were probably around 22, 23 when you went there. So, what did you see? I mean, can you show us a picture of what the life of people were?
Yeah, very tough in those conditions, in those very impoverished areas of the cities. Um, I have one image that sticks to me is going into a home of a woman just on the outskirts of Karachi and in the slum. And she had just had a newborn, so the nurses were following up with her, and we were part of the team. And we walked in there, and she was feeding the baby, a newborn, maybe a week old, was being bottle fed Fanta, the orange soda. She was feeding that in a bottle, and that was to me very, very impactful. Like, how can this happen today, in this world? So these kinds of images stay.
Of course, that's shocking. I mean, yeah. So you were there for the wellness to create awareness about
and give them access to healthcare, because many of them didn't know what was available to them, if they wanted to see a doctor or a nurse, where to go, how to go, and so forth. Yeah.
I see. So I guess that after your PhD, you look for various places where you could work.
Yeah, I was looking for opportunities on the global stage. I wanted to do work. I was actually applying for jobs with the UN, because I thought, okay, that may be where I fit for humanitarian work. And then ended up with the Art of Living Foundation.
Yeah, that's what I'm curious about. How did you end up here?
Right time at the right place. I think at that time I was going through a very tough time in my life, and very depressed, and a friend of mine brought me to the course, so the first Art of Living program, and the transformation was just night and day. And for me it was obvious that this is what I need to do. This is the knowledge that I need to share and teach.
So what transformed in one day?
The first experience of Sudarshan Kriya, the breathing technique that we teach in the organization, it had such an impact on me, on my mental health, well-being. I was from being depressed overnight to being completely liberated and free, and free of all of that, and just in a happy, peaceful state. It was very profound for me.
I see that you've seen suffering from like different parts, and you really wanted to help out people. What is that you really wanted to help? Like I guess you were working with women's association.
Yeah, I worked with a women's organization in Montreal for a few years, and we were giving frontline services as social work as a social worker to women who were newcomers to the country, who had faced violence, and refugees from various parts. So, we provide the frontline services. We used to take care of the immediate needs, housing, legal needs, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, the missing link was that we still were not, at least for me, I felt like, okay, but they're still not happy. We've done everything we can. But how do we provide that mental health support? How do we relieve them of the anguish and sadness and trauma that they've come here with? That was always a question for me. Like there's got to be something more out there that I can do for them.
And I guess you got this answer after your
Art of Living, yeah. After my own experience in Art of Living.
Wow. So I can imagine once you got that answer, you would have
Share
wanted to
it.
share it with
Yes.
people. So
Yeah.
how did that journey start?
So then that was obvious that I needed to teach it, and so within a year I did all the prerequisites that I needed. To completed the prerequisites, go for teacher training, and the rest is history. It's now 25 years since
Wow.
I've been doing this.
25 years. And is it full time?
Yes, I do this full time.
Wow. And wow, let me absorb that first. 25 years. Did you travel to other countries?
Yeah, I have traveled to many African countries, to conflict areas, where there's been wars, and mainly within Canada, and also to my home country, in Mauritius. I taught.
Because I've heard some stories of Africa, like when you were there. Would you like to share something that kind of moved you when you were doing some service activities there?
I think every country has its own specificity, but what was common everywhere is that people are looking for ways to feel peace and joy and relieve themselves of stress. So the stories are quite common everywhere. How an individual is when they come into the program, and how they leave after they've experienced the Sudarshan Kriya. In the war areas, at that time, when I was teaching in Chad, there were many instances of post-traumatic stress. Women with PTSD who were in the course, who would report that they were sleeping better, they were not having flashbacks and nightmares, and they were finally having that experience of peace, which they had not had for years.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of work done by Art of Living in veterans, how they're able to have that restful sleep.
Yeah.
And there's another sleep and anxiety protocol, I think that's been brought up.
Yeah,
so.
that's a new program that we're offering, because today, I think in Canada, at least 1 in 3, or if not 1 in 4 Canadians don't get a good night's sleep. The sleep good sleep is a big issue today, right from adolescents, university kids, teenagers, to grown adults.
True, and looking into this is one of the powerful sources of energy. If you don't get a proper sleep, then how do you have the energy to deal with situations around you?
Yeah, not just energy, but also your health is affected. Right?
True.
Good sleep is required for your immune system, a healthy, robust immune system, for regenerating your cells, for any function of your body requires proper sleep. So.
And talking about energy, we also know that there are other factors that impact, and one of the most powerful source to gather that energy that you lose if you don't have a good sleep or you had a bad mood is breath. Would you like to talk about how is breathing so much essential?
Well, breathing is essential to life. There would be no life if there was no breath.
That's true.
But it's also, yes, a vital source of life force energy, vitality, life force energy, prana, as you say in Sanskrit. So, and this has been known in the ancient yogic sciences for millennia, but today it's a well accepted fact that even in the scientific world, in the medical world, anyone who's treating trauma, stress, depression, they are starting to integrate breathing techniques as a very common practice. And Art of Living teaches some very powerful techniques that release the stresses from the deep cellular level, and also re-energize the system, realign the whole nervous system, and bring that resilience from within.
Is it the same sky breath, the Sudarshan Kriya you're talking about?
Yes, yeah.
So, since, I mean, if I have something that's so much powerful that has impacted me, yes, this is my natural instinct to spread it across the world.
Right.
How has your journey been after knowing such a powerful tool?
I am a different person. I can honestly say I don't recognize that person that I was, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago when I was, you know, we struggle through the daily, you know, life's ups and downs. But if we have a tool like I have today, then that struggle is not there. You can navigate rather than battle upstream, you know, when life throws challenges at you. You have the skill, the tools to remain centered, strong from within, and that's the value of that is immeasurable.
And how does your scientific mind would explain that?
I am a living proof of what Sudarshan Kriya can do. Like if, as I said, I don't recognize the person that I was before that. You know, and there's actually, Garima, there's a lot of scientific data now that supports and shows it's evidence backed. It's no more just you know, people telling you that they feel good after, but there's actual data that supports it now.
Would you like to share some of the
Some of the
information?
Yeah, there's plenty out there. There's, you know, over hundreds of publications that show the effectiveness of Sudarshan Kriya in relieving depression and anxiety and improving one's immune system, even at the level of the DNA. You know, there are changes that happen.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, I would just see why it's definitely spread over 180 countries, over.
Yeah, we teach these programs in over 180 countries and in all spheres of the population, from children. We have prison programs, we have programs in trauma affected areas, corporate programs. So, you know, today everyone at some point or the other experiences stress. And the fact is that we've never really learned, neither at home nor at school. No one has taught us how to handle our own mind and negative emotions. So this is where the breath plays a vital role.
Yes, and to all the listeners, this podcast just came knowing about Dr. Hitu more, but as I've seen, as more you go into depth of knowing Doctor, it's just knowing about the Sudarshan Kriya, knowing about art of living is just because that has such a tremendous impact on her life. Even for myself, I also want to put that word out too. So, is there anything you would like to, your last words you would like to share with people who are listening to this that could have probably some takeaway from today's podcast?
I think today it is the need of the day, need of the time that we live in, when there's so much turbulence on the outside, so much uncertainty, and so many challenges that one can face in our day to day, that we need to have, we need to be well equipped so that we can handle ourselves from within. You know, we don't get affected by the external circumstances that we face. So resilience is building one's own resilience, and finding the time for oneself to recharge one's own batteries, to recuperate from stress, to ultimately take care of oneself. Self-care is really, really necessary. And the busier we are, Garima, the more the need to meditate. You know, to learn these techniques and to meditate. Every human being needs to be able to do that.
So I would really like to thank Hitu for being present here. It was a pleasure having you, Hitu, today with us. And yeah, it is actually inspiring for me to just hear your story out, as starting from childhood, how you really wanted to do some service activities and how you found the cause, and also the platform where you could establish that cause was through the organization at a global level.
Art of living, yeah.
Yeah, and just to see how Art of Living has shaped your life in a direction that's, again, I'm speechless about. And thank you for all the service activities you have done for last 25 years with the organization for the humanity. And it was lovely again to have you. I wish to see you back in future.
Thank you, Garima. Thank you, Simba.
Okay, thank you, everyone.